What is interesting when we think about the Stoicism is that this type of philosophy, it is specifically a specific type of philosophy that was born in the end of the 4th century BC. And it is not a case, in fact, if we have to consider the different type of philosophies that, in particular, the main type of philosophies during the ancient Greek society, we know that this type of Hellenistic philosophies, for example, Stoicism, there was they were a specific type of consequence of the new type of hegemony, the hegemony of Alexander the Great. In fact, the different type of philosophies before the Hellenistic type of philosophies, the philosophies of a classical period, for example, the philosophy of Plato, the philosophy of Aristotle, these type of philosophies consider really important the idea of the community, therefore also the idea of politics and the debate between communities. In fact, for example, the main type of philosophers in the classical period, in relation with also the sophists, consider that there is a specific type of implication between politics and ethics and friendship, for example. Politics in relation with the idea of friendship, the connection between people, the idea that people develop a specific type of connection between them. But in any case, there is a specific type of connection also between the idea of community relation with the independence of a city state. With the Hellenistic society, in particular with the idea of Philip, the father of Alexander the Great, and in this sense also Alexander the Great, there is a new type of conquest that it was developed in the ancient Greek. And in any case, there is a specific type of new type of population that dominated the Greek situation. In this sense, the hegemony of the Macedonians. And this is really interesting because the hegemony of the Macedonians explained that this type of hegemony it was a strange hegemony in relation with the idea of a foreigner hegemony. In fact, the Macedonians were foreigners. This is really interesting because then Alexander developed a specific type of empire into the idea of Greece that developed a specific type of connection between two type of cultures, or better, many type of cultures into the idea of two type of cultures, the Persian cultures and at the same time the Greek culture and the Greek Macedonian culture. This is really interesting, and at the same time we have to consider this. In fact, when Alexander in the middle of the 4th century BC developed his type of conquest, arriving to the river Indo and returned to Babylon. He died in the 323 BC. And we know that in any case, this type of conquest, he developed his empire in 10 years, 15 years in this time. And this is really interesting. And this type of empire, this type of modality of imperialism connected different type of people that on the one hand were Greeks, on the other hand were Persians. And the idea of independence of a city-state were defeated, or in any case, fell. Yeah, this is really important to explain, because in this sense, the philosophies and the philosophers, in particular, that arrived after this period, in the end of the 4th century BC, also in Athens, for example, as the philosophy of Epicurus, consider the idea that, in any case, the real type of philosophy, the main type of philosophy, it's only that type of philosophy that is a private type of philosophy, where people has to consider themselves only in relation with friendship, but not that type of friendship who would like to develop a specific type of connection with politics, to consider a specific type of evolution of politics, relation with the idea of private life, and this type of connection between private and public. This is really interesting. In fact, if the ancients in general, also the Romans in this sense, as the Greeks, like the Greeks, considered the private life in relation with public, and therefore your actions in your private will have a specific type of influence in the public, according to the idea of this type of Hellenistic philosophies, in particular Epicurus philosophy, the Epicurean philosophy. The private life is most important than the public life, and the public life, it's only that life where you would like to have some vote, to have an important type of influence. the public life is that type of life where you would like to govern the others, where you would like to explain to the others what the others had to do, and therefore, according to, for example, Epicurus and the idea of also the Stoicism, the idea that in this case, fundamentally, the private life is only in relation with the idea of a specific type of friendship between people that live in this private life. But at the same time, according to this type of philosophy, it's better to it's better don't develop a specific type of connection between private life and politics, because according to this type of philosophies, it's better the evolution of a private life, because it's important to limit the contact of with the politics, with the public, with the city state. If we have to read this indirectly, we have to consider that indirectly why these philosophers explain this, because the city state it was fallen, the hegemony of the city state it was fallen, and therefore this type of philosophy, also the gods, the idea of main gods, the idea of polytheism, that it was still important in any case, entered in crisis in this period because Alexander the Great created a specific type of connection with the Persian cultures. It is important. Yeah, Alexander the Great considered himself as the son of Zeus, a demigod. But at the same time, this type of connection between Persians developed a specific type of evolution that considers specifically a connection between this type of different cultures that, according to the Greeks, were a sort of problems. In fact, the Greek city-state, it was from the archaic period in relation with its type of main idea of independence. With the imperialism of Alexander the Great, with the connection that Alexander the Great produced between these cultures, in particular the Persian cultures, the Persian culture that had into itself a different type of cultures as a multicultural culture, and the Greek philosophy in relation with the Greek city-state, the idea of Greek culture in relation with the Persian culture, this type of connection develop a specific new type of imperialism, an origin of imperialism that Greek didn't understand or didn't know. Because the only type of imperialism that Greek develops were the type of imperialism in relation with, in particular, between Greeks, or to limit the Persian Empire after the war against the Persian Empire, in particular at the beginning of the 5th century BC. And this is really interesting because is Plato, for example, if Aristotle is the sophist, also try to reflect about the idea of relation between politics and private life, also, for example, the main citizens of the ancient Greek society of the classical period, for example, Pericles or Alcibiades, etc., the citizens of Clisthenes, consider, or Themistocles, consider this type of connection, social life and private life, the idea of friendship, relation with the idea of politics, and therefore philosophy, relation also with the idea of politics, how to connect the idea of community with the idea of philosophy, how to connect the idea of rhetoric with the idea of logic, relation with the idea of community and philosophy of community. This type of philosophy, this type of reflections during the period of the Hellenistic period, after, in particular, the death of Alexander the Great, fell, because there was an empire, a different type of structure where the idea of city-state it was fallen. And in any case, the idea of Stoicism, the idea of Epicureanism, consider much better the idea of individualism in relation with the individual, in relation with itself, the individual relation with his way. Also with the other, but only specific others. That other in relation with a specific type of community of friendship. And pay attention, according to this type of philosophy, because according to this type of philosophies, you have to pay attention in relation with the idea of politics. Because if you consider that men or women but in particular men in relation with that ideology of that period, if you consider as important people that do politics, could be some problems. Because the main type of philosophy, according to this type of the Hellenistic philosophies, it was in relation with the main philosophy, it was in relation with the private life. That it is a different thing from the public life. And there is a division. Therefore, the main idea is if in the classical period of ancient Greek, or also in the archaic period of ancient Greece, there was a specific type of connection between social life and private life, where the actions of Pericles or the actions of Plato or the philosophy in relation with the actions of Pericles were considered by philosophy. In this period, with the Hellenistic philosophy, not always, but in any case, it was important as an argument because it was explained by this type of philosophies. The private life had to be divided from the public life. Therefore, your actions are only important for private life because public life is a relationship between people who are not, who don't like the true philosophy. Potentially, according to this type of philosophies and this type of explanation, it will be argued, for example, it will be argued, for example, from also by Marcus Aurelius in the 2nd century AD, after before a long time from the 4th century BC, because it was a Stoic and Rome maintained and reflect and consider important to reflect about this type of tradition, the Hellenistic philosophy that Rome maintained and studied. The private life, the idea of friendship, the politics that could be a tragic for the private life. And in this sense, the real Stoicism, for example, arrived to divide these two types of lives. It is important to explain that the Stoicism as the Epicureanism tried to think for that man who had to follow the politics, the life of politics. It is important to consider that this type of philosophy would like to influence the actions in relation with politics and politics and private life. Therefore, in other words, if you have this type of necessity, as Marcus Aurelius had, you could use your Stoicism to develop specific type of behaviors for the politics. But this is a problem at the same time. In fact, in Marcus Aurelius, for example, it was a problem because a philosopher or a man who would like, according to the Hellenistic philosophies, to follow the Epicurean philosophy or the Stoic philosophy, it is better that he don't have specifically he doesn't have specifically works in relation with politics, duties in relation with politics. But if this happen, therefore, as Marcus Aurelius saw in his life, there is important develop a specific type of division, and in any case, it is important between politics and private, as Marcus Aurelius did, because it was an emperor, and his role as an emperor cannot defeated the idea of Stoicism, but the idea of Stoicism cannot cannot develop, cannot enter into his idea of politics or the idea of Roman Empire, because in this case could be a contradiction, because the Stoicism is an individual philosophy. And this is really interesting because differently by the classical period, these type of philosophies were born as individual private philosophies. Bye.